Hello. I have changed the setting of my videos for now because the lighting is a lot better in here. This is our guest room, so there's a lot of junk in here. But for the Lady Hero video, I had this whole list of like Kathleen Hanna, and who I remember listening to in my room when I was a teenager. And I can't remember how I heard about Bikini Kill. But yeah, that was my first kind of introduction to feminism, and that was my first. I'm talking really quiet because it's really super quiet at my house, but I'm not the only one here, so it's kind of weird. But they're my first kind of introduction to feminism when I was like aware it was feminism, and yeah, it kind of helped me feel more empowered with what I was going through at the time, because I had some difficult things in my childhood, and yeah, it made me feel strong, I guess. J.K. Rowling is one of my big lady heroes. I think it's really cool that she remembers where she came from, and she remembers how hard it was to deal with depression and everything, and that she's really philanthropic, and she went from being a billionaire to a millionaire solely because she gave so much to charity, which I think is really, really admirable and really cool. And she's spoken on the importance of, getting help and everything, which I really like as well. But I don't have any sisters or anything, but I do have my mom, and she is my best friend, and I know a lot of people say that, and I've heard people say that they don't understand that someone's mom can like be their best friend or whatever. My mom really is my best friend, and she's been there for me through a lot of stuff. Like, I never had a therapist, I just had my mom. And she was always really patient and really kind. She was kind of like she didn't understand. We're very, very, very different people. My mom and my aunt always say, and my aunt's another one of my big lady heroes, and my grandma, but my mom and my aunt always say that they think that they switched daughters at birth because my cousin Shelby is so much like my mom and I'm so much like my Aunt Bee. But yeah, we're really, really different, but we manage to get along, and I think we kind of bring out the best in each other, which is good. My grandma is one of my big lady heroes. There's a really cute story with how her and my grandpa met that I would love to tell, but maybe it's kind of irrelevant. Well, I don't know. It's relevant. So she and my grandpa, when they first met, her two sisters had died from tuberculosis, and they thought she had it because she had a spot on her lung, which is just genetic, and I have it too. But back then, this was before they had like the skin test to test for tuberculosis, and so they called her into, is it a sanatorium if you're sick and a sanitarium if you have mental illness? I can't remember, but one of the two, and she was supposed to be quarantined until they could find out definitively whether she had tuberculosis or not, because my grandma, my great-grandma, her husband, my great-grandfather, he died. He had gotten kicked out of Kentucky for running moonshine. And so they're living in Ohio now. My grandma was the only one of her siblings to be born in Ohio. And then when he got up here, he started gambling, and I guess he owed some people some money, and they beat him. And they beat him to death. I come from a really like rowdy stock of people. It's pretty ridiculous, but that's a whole other story for a whole other time. And my great-grandma raised 7 kids, 2 of which died before the age of 14, all by herself. So she was a badass, and she was definitely a lady hero. And but because of that, because she was the only one taking care of what was now 5 kids, she couldn't risk getting tuberculosis. And so they put her in quarantine in this tuberculosis hospital for about a year. And right before she went in, she went to her sister was working at this restaurant, and she went there, and there were these boys there, and they're all brothers, and they'd just come from Virginia. And my grandma says that she can remember that they all had really, really dark hair and dark skin, but these bright blue eyes. And they were just really shocking looking, because that's sort of an odd contrast that you don't see very much. And she remembered them, but she didn't remember what was to be my grandpa, because he was so quiet and he was so shy, and all he said to her was hello. But when she went into the hospital the next day to be quarantined, he came to see her, and no one else would come to see her, and she was engaged at the time. And the guy was the son of a preacher, and he actually wrote her a letter saying that he wasn't going to risk getting tuberculosis, and so he wasn't going to come see her. But my grandpa came to see her every single day for a year, and she said like they would play board games, and he would cut her hair, and she went through all of that. Like, I mean, she had my grandpa, thank God, but pretty much all by herself. And then when they got out, my great grandma didn't want them to get married. She wanted my grandma to marry the preacher's son, of course. And she didn't really know my grandpa, and my grandpa's half Native American, which was kind of taboo back in the day. And so she didn't want them to get married. But my grandma, who is, I mean, people think I'm stubborn and I speak my mind and I get mad. But my grandma is like 20 times worse. I don't know, maybe I'll get worse when I get older. But she is feisty. Like every single time she goes in the hospital, now that she's older, she had like a bad hip for a while, and she had a tumor in the back of her brain, but she's fine now, thank God. But she, like all the nurses always comment how feisty she is. And so she didn't listen to my great grandma, and they ran away to Indiana, Liberty, Indiana, and she was 15, and it's the only place that they could get married without consent from a parent. So they ran away and they got married there, and they were married for 50-some years until my grandpa died, and my grandpa is the single greatest man I've ever known in my entire life. He was just amazing, and my grandma says she can remember, because like my grandma's from Virginia and they were rednecks or whatever. Well, they weren't rednecks, but he was pretty rowdy, and he got in fights a lot when he was younger, apparently. And my grandma said she can remember, because he was so big, he was like 6'6", 6'5", and he wasn't like lanky at all. Even as he got older, like he was still like muscly, like I said with my grandma, when he would go into the hospital, the nurses always say how much muscle he still had and how like strong he still was, even though he was older. And anyway, my grandma can remember him getting in fights at like these bars that they would go to, and my grandma is so tiny. She's like 5'2", I think, and she was always so skinny. And she said that when he would get in fights, she would come up behind him and she would like crack a beer bottle and like threaten the people that he was getting into fights with. So she never stood to the side, and she was never quiet, and she was never the complete opposite of my grandma Coon, which is really funny. My dad's mom, the complete opposite of her, but I definitely look up to her. And my mom is my mom's really quiet, kind of to a fault. Like she lets people run over her a lot, but she's the most giving person I've ever known in my entire life. And I think life is constantly trying to find that balance. I find that I can be too much like my grandma, and that I'm a little bit too feisty and a little bit too harsh, I guess. And sometimes I wish I could be more like my mom, but then my mom says sometimes she wishes she could be more like me. So I don't know. But yeah, just burped. Sorry, had like a stifled burp there. But they're the greatest women I've ever known. And my mom was so giving, like I said, and she's the most patient human being I've ever met in my entire life. I have no patience. I can't even wait in a line to get anything. I think that's why I mostly shop online. Like, I'm just massively impatient. But my mom just has like this endless well of like giving and patience, and she's really good about it. And she's given her whole life to her kids. And she always said, that we didn't choose to be brought into this world, so that was her job and that was her duty. And she's just really amazing and patient. And she put up with a lot of crap from me when I was a teenager. Because, like I said, I went through a lot when I was younger. And so, and they didn't know what had happened for a long time. And so I don't know. I don't know if I was necessarily rebellious. Like, I would always try to dye my hair weird colors. Like, I've had every hair color, pink, purple, blue, whatever. And she didn't like that. And I would wear clothes that she didn't necessarily like. And they weren't necessarily revealing. They were just sort of, I don't know, like artsy and punky, like I dress now, basically, but in teenage form. And she didn't really like that. And I cuss a lot, which she hates. But she always let us express ourselves and be ourselves. Like, our rooms when we were younger. Like, they were just covered, like, my entire old room in this house is like a mural. My old room in our old house was like that, and I had my ceiling was covered with like record sleeves and like magazine cutouts, and in like a circle, so it literally covered like every inch. And they never complained about that. As long as I didn't write on the doors, that was their big thing. As long as I didn't write on the woodwork, I was okay. And she let me write whatever I wanted. I remember having her read my poems when I was younger, and some of that shit was like disturbing. Because, like I said, I was going through a lot, and she never like judged me or anything. And I always knew that I could go for her to anything. Like literally anything. Like, I've had a few people say, when I tell them, like, after I lost my virginity, I came in, I had snuck out, and I was coming in. I'm horrible at, like, sneaking out, and I'm horrible at lying. But I came in through the door, and she was standing there, like, silhouetted by the light in the back hall, and she just looks at me, like, dead in the eyes, because she knows I'm a horrible liar, and she goes, "Did you have sex?" And I was like, "Yes, I did." And she did the same thing with my older brother. And she just knows, and we can talk about anything, and she wasn't bad about it at all. She said that she wished that I would have waited, but like, she got me birth control and everything, so in that way she's really progressive as opposed to a lot of people around here, I guess. But yeah, those are my lady heroes. I'm probably not gonna edit this video, so I hope you like it. And yeah, I'm trying to think of more. I don't know, like, fictional people, does that count? Hermione, Starbuck. Just hit my computer. It sort of stalled out for a while. I don't know. Yeah, that's my video. I hope you like it, even though it was sort of long-winded. How long is this? Like 12 minutes? It's not that bad. I'm gonna cut it off here. Bye.